Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. Well, we're here to revisit Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second
Yeah.
Ant-Man movie,
Mm-hmm.
directed by Peyton Reed. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. How did you feel about it, this revisit?
I think one scene stood out to me in particular that I don't know if I took as much guff over the first time around. But for the most part, I mean, there's more for what this movie is trying to achieve. I'm just like, yeah, okay, cool. But then I'm like, but wait, hold on. That doesn't mean we suspend good writing for this. So, I mean, it's a good ride, but then ultimately I'm like, wait, what? This is too convenient.
Oh, so wait, what was the scene that bothered you?
It's the Michelle Pfeiffer scene where she just like shows up and is like, oh, hey, I'm gonna say hi to everyone and then touch you and then everything's fixed, right? It's too convenient. It's too convenient. It's just like, hey, immediately I knew what to do. Like, I wish there was more explanation than Henry, I've changed. I'm not the woman you knew 30 years ago and all that kind of stuff. Like, explain that a little bit. It's just the whole thing's a bit too convenient once we get there, right? It's almost like the whole ghost character to me was left out of really any consideration. It seemed like the whole movie was just about getting her back.
Oh, yes, 100% it's about getting her back. I would say, though, I also have an issue with her return, but it's mostly, sorry, we should say Janet Van Dyne's return.
Not Michelle Pfeiffer.
No, my issue is more, the movie is called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and certainly Hope Van Dyne is not a focus of this movie. She's definitely there, but like, and to your point, she wants her mom back, but that's pretty much where it ends. And maybe my distaste for the actress is getting in the way, but I don't think so, because I feel like I spoke around it the first time we reviewed this, that like I didn't feel like I got any deeper feeling or sense of who Hope Van Dyne is.
Right.
And I think it was that episode where I said, like, a good sequel usually like expands the world or just does a deeper dive into the characters. And I feel like both of us were looking forward to the Wasp actually being a part of the action in this sequel. And again, I know she's on screen, but I just felt like, yeah, she's just there. I don't really, outside of she wants her mom back, I thought there was many interesting avenues they could have gone. And to avoid the whole I didn't like it because it wasn't what I wanted, I'll just say I don't think that they fully developed Hope. And further than that, I was like, well, maybe they mean the original Ant-Man and Wasp, like Hank and Janet, but Janet's just not in the movie for that long. She bookends the movie. And it's a shame, because I think Michelle Pfeiffer is great. And I thought she's amazing in that first scene where she's trying to convince Hope that she doesn't want to go with them because it's going to be so boring. Like, I was like, yeah, like, this is great. It doesn't have anything to do with, well, it has to do with the de-aging, but it doesn't have anything to do with effects or like excitement. It's just like that's a nice mom. Like, you get right away why Hope would want her mom back. I mean, obviously you get that, but like in that moment, it's less telling and showing and just showing you what Hope is missing. And I like that, but then I'm just left missing Janet throughout the movie, because it's a lot of just talking about her. And we haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania at the time of recording this. I think we're just going to put this episode out like the week before it comes out. But we haven't, I know it's coming close to our review of that of that second sequel, but we haven't seen it yet. This is like a month in advance. So I'm not trying to say anything out of line. I don't know anything about the movie. I hope that we get more of her in this third movie, because it looks like they can't hide her this time. Like, she seems like she has to be a big part of this.
I do agree with what you're saying. Like, although she gets a lot of screen time, she doesn't get a lot to do with it other than like it seems like the kid
I mean Janet,
version.
but like Hope, Hope doesn't really do much.
Yeah, like Hope is it feels like the heavy lifting is actually done by the kid actor in that first scene, like you said, right? It's just like, oh, I understand how this would be like this, but to me, every bit of her conflict was resolved in the first one, right? Because her primary driving force until they realized, oh, mom might be alive, was, hey, dad, why are you keeping this secret from me? And now that they've done that, it's like, okay, you two working together doesn't really change too much of a dynamic or anything like that. And it's just like, okay, yes, that's great to see. You're motivated by the same thing, but she doesn't get anywhere to develop her character in any of it, right? There's no conflict within the working together with her dad all of a sudden. There's nothing.
The conflict is that there obviously was some romantic thing going on with them at the end of the first movie that's not at the beginning of this movie for obvious reasons. And I thought even that would have been interesting, like the whole, hey, we're a team and you just left to do something that we could have done together.
Right.
Like, I know that they talk about it in a couple of scenes, but it felt like that was enough to like really give her something to do and like feel a way about. But it just seems like it only comes up when they remember that that's a thing.
I feel like they gave her more to say than to do with this, because you're right, the dialogue that she actually has with Scott is like, hey, like obviously still upset about the whole like Civil War thing where you and Cap went to Germany and all that kind of stuff, right? So I like that she does, but it's all said and there's nothing done through that. It's just it takes a backseat. There's nothing developed.
I wish they unpacked it a bit more.
Right.
But again, this is me trying to avoid the whole they didn't do what I wanted, so I didn't like it. I'm just saying that I would only point this out to point out that there were avenues to give Hope more things to overcome in the movie. It seemed like they were trying to do it with was his name like Saul or something? I don't remember the guy's name. But it's the guy from Justified, who I used to know the name of, and now I can't remember his name. But I'll look it up. But it seemed like that side quest was something. But then even he just feels like he's there, and there's no real need for him to be there.
Because I felt like
Walton
Michael
Goggins.
Pena. Oh
Sonny
yeah,
Birch.
right.
Sonny Birch.
That's a letdown of a character too. Like for Walton Goggins to have that, and just like are we supposed to be afraid of this guy? What's going on here? It's just like it seems very cartoonish, which is good. It's nice and light in tone, but I'm just like, I don't perceive it as a real threat. I don't perceive anything as a real threat. The ghost thing is just like, okay, you're not actually trying to kill anyone here. You're just trying to save your life. I get that.
Well, at one point she is
sense.
trying to kill Cassie Lang.
Well, sure. As
I
an end store means.
She is a threat to the extent that you understand that like there's not much people can do to her to make her feel worse than she already feels. So she is willing to do a bunch of stuff that maybe some other people wouldn't. I'm not too worried about Ghost of this, because really, as you stated up top, it's just about, can we get Janet out of the quantum realm? And Ghost is a complication. Bill Foster is a complication. Jimmy Woo is a complication, but it's all just like, I say this as like, I would say this is a fun movie. I think you did as well, but like, I was a bit let down because it felt like the first movie was really tight and really fun.
I agree.
And you really got the idea of like, Scott needs to become the hero his daughter or always thought he was. And Hope and Hank needed to figure their shit out. That seemed pretty good and straightforward. There wasn't really much fat on that movie. I think I even said like, oh shit, this movie's like almost 2 hours, and I thought it was like a 90-minute movie. Like it really goes. This movie, I just remember thinking like, when is this gonna end? I don't remember how long it is, but like, I think that doesn't work for me. And I also just again, it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that's the point of these revisits, is that we've seen what they can do when they like commit to like, hey, we're doing Wanda and Vision, hey, we're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier, and in this movie, it's like, well, it's certainly Wasp's like desire that is pushing this, but like they've got Scott like worrying about some security thing he's doing, like, and I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, he's not a part of this. Like, he's in the movie because he stole a suit.
Yeah.
It's the first movie, but in the first movie, you're like, this is fun because he's learning what to do. This time, you're like, yeah, like it seems like there's the whole I need to get back, and you can feel that ticking clock because he wants to get off of probation, but like, I don't think they needed the extra like, oh, he needs to work with Michael Pena and T.I. and David Dastmalchian on this pitch they're doing.
Well,
like,
they certainly
all of that
didn't.
is like, we don't need this.
Yeah, they certainly didn't need it, but it was clearly fan service because everyone enjoyed Michael Pena's performance so much for the first
what
one.
I'm saying is he can be in it without that stupid stuff. Like, I'm not saying you don't need those characters. I'm saying you don't need that plot point.
I agree.
It's not really fan service.
Well, they're trying to expand their characters,
and it has nothing to do with his security thing when he does the thing that everyone likes that he does.
Right. And so here's the funny thing is like the way I look at it is like Michael Pena and those characters get way better writing than Hope ever does in this movie. Like realistic. Well, really? Yeah. I feel like the trio of them, like
you could like them better, but I don't think they have better writing.
It's just I feel like you're right, for a movie called Ant-Man and the Wasp, I feel like I got neither. It's weird, right? Yeah. It's under delivers on both, and I'm just like, okay, this is fun. It's something we've seen already, and then I don't know what to say.
I'll say this for like maybe the first 10 minutes. I was like, hey, maybe I was wrong about this movie. Like, there is something to the first bit of the movie where I'm like, yeah, like you know what, maybe I was harsh on this, but then it all falls apart when I realize like, oh yeah, like I remember like there isn't much to the Wasp other than her singular I need my mom back. And if I'm being honest, it feels, and this is where my bias might come in, but I feel it deeper from the Michael Douglas performance of I need my wife back. Like, it feels like more anguish, and even though they start the movie with this is from Hope's point of view and this is what Hope misses about her mom, and they endear you to Janet like right away. And the whole thing of Scott has or he thinks it's a dream, but it's really Janet like walking him through the stuff of hide and seek. Like, all of that is like, okay, yeah, like I get that this is Hope thing, but I think you said it earlier too, that younger actress does more with it than Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah, then she's allowed to. I mean, like, because the thing is,
I don't mean to say that like Evangeline Lilly underwhelmed me with a great script and she didn't deliver. I think you're right. It is important to note that I don't think she was given an opportunity to be better than she is in the movie.
Yes. Yeah, she has no space to go anywhere, because to me that the character just keeps the same note throughout the whole movie as Hope, like adult Hope. And then it's, you don't really see anything that's unique out of it that's not reflected out of Michael Douglas, and because he's the one actually going into the quantum realm, taking the giant risk and all that kind of stuff.
He goes in the end at the end. You're right.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, well, where are you? And like, it's weird. Like, it's an under delivery on the Wasp aspect of it.
100%. Like, I know I like Paul Rudd more than you. So like any time with him, I'm still having a good time, but
he's grown on me. I don't have a bias for him the same way anymore. I've checked that out, but like, he doesn't get a lot to do in this either, right? It's just like,
I just don't think it's focused. Whereas Wasp doesn't really have anything else to do.
Right.
He's got, as I said, he's split between like the guilt, which again, you could have done the whole movie about his guilt around what he did to implicate Hank and Hope in the whole breaking the Sokovia Accords.
Right.
That could have just been all they, but then they're spreading it also with like, which is fair. You need to be on house lockdown and house
Mhm.
arrest. Sorry, you need to be on house arrest, and you're trying to start a business. So those three things, I feel like two of them can go together, but you don't really need any of those three things to kind of dovetail together.
Mhm.
It could have just been, and I hope it wouldn't be the business thing. Well, those first two things are enough to like push you through the movie and the events that happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think so then yeah, so his focus is split, but not in like a oh, they've really pushed him to the limit type way because
Mhm.
he's you could just be like, oh shit, like yeah, they got him out of the house. What's he gonna do? Jimmy Woo's gonna find him, but they're like, no, we sorted that out. And it's
Right.
not really an issue for him because even when they show up at the university, I think it's Hank that's like, they're not here for you though, because if they
Mhm.
were here for you, you would have known because we've got the thing set up in the home. So you're like, oh, so he's not in any danger really right now. He could just get away because they're not actually looking for him. They could
Mhm.
bump into him, but they're not looking for him. And I'm just like, yeah, like they don't really give that the weight it could have had.
Mhm.
And then again, this is the last time I bring up that business thing. I was like, who cares? What, like he's an Avenger. Who cares if he's? And I know that later on, like Top Gun,
Mhm.
they talk about who gets paid and who doesn't get paid, but like
Yep.
it, I don't care
Yeah.
if that. I don't care if that business goes well for him because he's not gonna have time to be there in any meaningful way. At the very least, like they're gonna just be mad at him for being gone all the time.
See, here's the thing I did find interesting about the movie is that it sets up a whole bunch of moral conundrums, but there's no actual payoff, and that's why that whole scene bothers me so much. So the whole idea of you're right, Scott being torn between a decision between basically being able to unite with his family versus helping Hope and Hank
Mm-hmm.
reunite their family as like guilt, like you say. He's torn between that, but there's no moral conundrum because it all obviously works out. But it's replicated in multiple aspects of the movie, most notably the ghost situation, right? Because the ghost situation is driven by the fact that I need to get Janet to take her life force. I forget how they know that, but that's what they arrive at. I'm like, okay, so that's what you're gonna do, and the whole like peak of the movie is like, okay, what's going to happen now? Right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
woman that they barely know now. What's the moral conundrum? Do we keep our family together, not knowing that our family is fundamentally different than what it used to be? Like we're not reuniting back to that scene. We're just reuniting, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we have to figure that out. And then the moral conundrum of, okay, well, what do we do with this ghost thing? Do we just let her die? Like, are we heroes if we just do that? Like, what do we do? Do we sacrifice or and that's why it just angers me. Like she just knows without any
Oh,
real explanation what to do to fix the whole situation, right? It's just there's no
uh,
conundrum
I
anymore.
don't
There's no
agree with that,
moral.
but
Really?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think she has been there for a long time. I
Right.
think she would know what her powers are. I know that there's an element of like a bit of surprise that it's working, but I think she would intuitively be able to like, let me try this.
Mm-hmm.
If your plan is to suck the life out of me, let me try this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fine. I don't think that it's well executed because it happens all at once,
Yes.
but I don't agree that it's something where she has no clue what to do. I think that there's enough there for me to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like she tried it and it worked. Maybe she should have tried more than one thing for it to work. But I like by that point I want the movie to be done. So I'm not really looking for more time to be spent on this.
Right.
And so like and also that the whole do we let her die? I feel like it was already agreed upon that like Hank and Bill again, it all happens at once. It's not
Mm-hmm.
packed the way I want anything in this movie to be unpacked, but there is dialogue suggesting that Hank and Bill have decided, look, at the end of this, we need to help each other out. So I believe that to mean like, I'll help you with the Janet thing. I'll help you with the ghost thing. I don't think there was ever any, what do we do with this? I think that was the long and short of it.
But it's also I guess, but the issue with the Bill thing is it's all tied up with like, oh, we're told about the backstory about like how there was like that screwing over of situation of how
Mm-hmm.
he bitterly and all that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden we're working through all that distrust.
Yeah, as I said, it's not
not
well,
good.
but I don't think it. I think
Yeah.
there is a distinction between what you said and what I've just brought up.
No, I do believe, I do agree with that. 100%. There's a big distinction, but it's, to me, it does bother me that it's just the first thing, whatever have you, that's what we do and all that kind of stuff without any sufficient explanation in the pod. Because I was just like, okay, you're in the pod, you're traveling back, that takes a small amount of time, at least enough to be like, hey, Henry, I'm not the same person I was 30 years ago. That's a very valid thing to assume. My question is, why is she found in the middle of nowhere? We're left to assume she's been in isolation. We obviously know she's not, based on the kind of trailer stuff for the Quantum Mania stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird to me that it's just like, okay, and Hope even says this, like, I don't even know if I'm getting my mom back. She has been in there isolated and all that kind of stuff for how many years? Like, she could be a completely different person, which is 100%.
I think that is
great.
All of what you're saying as well. But what I'm saying is that bothers me more than what you're talking about, because
right
at the end of the day, like, it's the MCU. We've talked many times about how everything is a seed for something that could pay off in 10 movies. Like, if they don't know what they want to do with her yet, I'm, as someone who talks as much shit as I do about, hey, people don't understand that they're doing something differently, I can't really stand on, hey, how come they didn't explain this thing in this movie, knowing that Michelle Pfeiffer's coming back for another movie. Like, I'm not saying it's not a fair thing, but to me, it bothers me more that they set up the idea of, like, well, I don't know, like, she could be evil when we bring out, and then she's just out and she's like, no, I'm good, don't worry about it. Yeah, they could change that in this third movie, or even a movie after this third movie. But that kind of thing of like, well, why'd you even bother with that? Because it is enough to just be like, she's been in there for 30 years, something could be up. You don't have to be like, who knows what's gonna happen when she comes out, and then have it be like, nothing, she'll be fine. And more than that, she'll fix our problem for us. Like, that is weird to me, but I think this is just for me. The whole, how come they didn't explain what she was up to me, I always just be like, look, if this whole thing ends and they never explain it, I'll come back to that. But a lot of stuff gets explained later.
Right. But I mean, talking about the confines within this movie, I'm just
but that's what I'm saying.
Not satisfied.
I don't look at it like that.
Right. I know you don't look at it like that, but I mean, I do, in the sense where I'm like, there was room to be able to say or indicate something a little bit more. Like, if Hank was, for example, in the quantum realm, and I could be remembering this incorrectly, but in the quantum realm, was Hank going crazy and she showed up to, like, do the same thing to her, to Ghost? Or was he completely fine and they were like, oh, there you are, that's a mask, cool, let's get in my ship?
My memory is that he had other issues, which was something was going to eat him.
Right. So okay. So it wasn't even that. So it wasn't like there's indication of, oh yeah, she has changed, there's powers already, because that would have been like, okay, cool. It's just, my issue is it's too convenient. It's just lazy writing to me. It feels lazily delivered. I'm
Definitely
like, this is
lazily executed. But yeah, I still maintain that it seems like this third movie is explaining what happened to her in there.
Yes, it seems like it will, but how much of that will be that level of importance, right? Like, my question now is, it becomes what, and I have to be cognizant of how much time I spend on this topic because we're talking about this movie, but the idea of, okay, you're there, you have got Bill Murray as a former acquaintance, I will say, to be accurate right now, and yeah, you've got some kind of messing arounds in that kind of whatever that little thing is that Kang made. It's just, yeah, okay, that's going to be explained very, very quickly. But how much more of the movie is just going to be like us being like, okay, give us more Kang, do all this kind of like apparently MODOK's a part of this. Didn't know that, but
at this point we've seen the trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah, MODOK's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's not really worth talking about because we'll see the movie and then we'll be able to assess.
Yep.
What you're talking about. Like,
yeah. But I mean, they're
yeah, I don't know
yeah,
what to tell you. Like it's
you're right. They're most likely going to have to explain it because she's going to be the guide to the quantum realm, right? So
that's what I'm
they're going to
basing
have to
this off
explain
of.
it.
She's the
Of
only
course.
one that knows, like, hey, you're trying to send a beacon to the quantum realm, turn it off. Then they get there. She's like, you
Yeah.
can't trust this person. And we saw Bill Murray be like, hey, it's Janet Van Dyne. So like she's known she will serve as like I feel like she'll be like Hank Pym was in the first movie, like kind of just showing them the ropes.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. But yeah, I think to your point, we'll see how much because yeah, they probably do need to focus more on Kang for this movie as the second trailer kind of pivoted to. But we'll see. I don't, as you said, there's not much benefit in going over the third movie just yet.
Yeah. And that I will say does concern me because of the fact that where I think we've ultimately landed on already is that they underdelivered on both Ant-Man and Wasp, which is the both titular characters to this. Aside from the first movie, which was just Ant-Man and like arguably a little bit more better character development in terms of Wasp, then I'm just like, it feels like I'm a little worried they're going to get sidelined again because of the Kang situation.
Well, I saw some YouTube reactor making a good point. This is the last thing I'll say about this third movie. That even when you see the logo now, it's like Ant-Man and the Wasp, it faded out and Quantum Mania is brought to the front. Yeah,
and Quantum Mania is actually bigger in the actual posters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, what are we supposed to call this movie now? Right? Are we just calling it Quantum Mania? Because I'm fine with that, but it just like it feels like these characters are just a delivery vehicle for stuff to happen. And that doesn't feel good within its movie.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily, because we still also have like really, really well told stories within the whole like their own solo movies. And that's why I'm like a little upset with this one because it doesn't really.
I don't think this is
it's too distracting
at its best, but it is still
right.
Like,
it's still trying
it's
to
low end MCU. Like I still think that even when we can acknowledge that things are well told stories, the greater picture of it is to deliver more stuff through these properties that people know and like.
True.
Yeah. I think that's why that's the shift for me is I'm engaging with MCU the way it's taught me over more than 10 years at this point how to engage with it.
Fair enough.
So any win I can get of like, wow, that's really good storytelling, or this made me feel something more than, oh, that was cool. Perfect.
Yeah.
But I feel like they've made it clear what their main focus or the overall focus is. That could change director to director, writer to writer, but all seeing Kevin Feige and his team overlooking things, I think we know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, we're telling a meta story within a story within a bigger story. And I'm like, cool, like that. Just give your characters a little bit more room to do stuff. Would love that. Because I'm like, Ant-Man really seems like,
for sure.
Yeah, Ant-Man really seems sidelined by this entire thing. Like that whole downtown San Francisco thing, I'm like, to get the lab back, I'm like, okay, this is cute.
I think like that's the creative. I haven't. I mean, it's not much I love, but I genuinely like Cassie Lang in this. Like his daughter, I think she's really good.
I agree.
I get why she can't show up in Endgame, but it is kind of a bummer that even that actress can't show up again. They've had 3 Cassies and not even in the course of 3 movies, but whatever. Like I think Cassie's great. I genuinely like what's his name? Oh boy. How am I getting I'm just forgetting everyone's names these days. But he's Bobby Cannavale. I guess.
Oh, I love his character. Yeah.
I love how supportive he is in this. And
yeah, man.
Even Judy Greer's Maggie, like, just the two of them, like they're fans of Scott in this movie, and I'm like, good. I like that they were like, yeah, he saved us. So, in addition to being like the father of my daughter and the father of my stepdaughter, like, we acknowledge that he's a hero that we want to like support. Yeah, he's trying.
It's a wonderful co-parenting situation, and I really love seeing that, and just like I love all the gags with like all the men being so blown away by the magic, especially his reaction, like just, hey, how'd you do it? It was so genuine. Yeah, and I'm like, that was great. I love. At first, I was like, oh, are they gonna get mad at him for like wasting their time with it? And but he's like, how'd you do that? Yeah. And then Jimmy Woo, and
I like
knowing
Jimmy
where
Woo in this movie.
Yeah, knowing where he goes with the sleight of hand stuff later on in WandaVision and all that. It's really
But
funny.
I also think that he's good with Scott in their scenes together. Like I like that there's this awkward thing of like, wait, were you like, what do you mean you're seeing me? Like, do you mean for like a day? He's like, wait, should I be asking for that? Like, I like that he's confident in what he needs to do, but he's also obviously a bit charmed by Scott. So like that complicates things for him.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to make the character of Jimmy Woo not look completely incompetent while us as the audience knows that he has to be bamboozled. You know what I mean? So
he doesn't look like an idiot.
And I really love that
a bumbling person. It's just
he's an
Scott
awkwardly
is thinking about it, and he's got help. Like he's got people that are trying to help him.
Yeah, he's just an awkward kind of guy, and he's out of his league on this one. But it's the fact that final scene together will just. It's such a good scene with him and Scott together. It's just like when he just does that weird like cop threat thing. It's like, I'll see you around. And then like Scott legitimately just like, what, where? Yeah. Like, are you going to stalk me? Because that's
like, why?
Why would you? And I'm like, that's amazing. And the fact that he landed on what, do you want to do something together is great. I'm like, this was such an awkwardly cringe moment. And I really love that in terms of the comedy delivery. And he did that they both did that very, very well.
I also like Usman's attempt at denying truth serum. I think he's like, no, that's not a thing. It's not a thing. They're like, it seems like this is and then like at the end he's like, I guess this is truth serum. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that, and I don't know if Bill Foster overall works, but I like when they were doing like the dick measuring contest. He was like, I did get 20 yeah, like, that's nice. That's nice. Well, how about you? I do. No, really, I want to know.
Yeah. I would love to know what like huge Ant-Man fans thought of this movie, knowing that they basically got a lot of like deep cut stuff, right? Like the idea of I forget who that professor, like that first professor was, the one that exploded in the thing. Ghost Stad, basically. He's like Egghead in the comics and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's a cool deep cut kind of thing. And then Bill Russell having his own thing as actually like Goliath in the comics. I'm like, that's cool that they did that. So I'm wondering how an actual like huge Ant-Man fan thinks about those kind of insertions, because I'm like, I can appreciate the fact that they went deep to do those kind of things, but overall the execution of it was just fumbled, I think.
I mean
as a whole movie, not those characters specifically.
I don't know if it's fumbled, because I guess for me, if he was actually a superhero, that would really undercut like a lot of what first like section of MCU was based on, which was, hey, Nick Fury finally gets to like use superheroes. I think the only way you can work them in is this way of like, yeah, Ant-Man was like secretly doing stuff, but he never got large, so that was the whole point. He's supposed to be covert. You can't really have a Goliath and then be like, and no one remembers him. Yeah. Like anytime they do like someone was a superhero, like in Falcon and Winter Soldier when they had the black Captain America, it has to be like there was a huge cover up of this because they didn't want a black person to be a captain, like to be Captain America. Like, and I think like you just got to be like, yeah, like at least they named it. He was part of the Goliath program. He's Bill Foster. He can get big. I don't know to what end, but he can. Yeah. So like you could just be like, well, that's nice that they did that, and he worked with Hank. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's room for him in particular to be able to be like, and now he's going to suit up in this movie. Or I mean, I don't think that's what you're suggesting, but I just feel like, to me, that's the beauty of the execution, and it's more just like, okay, he's here now, but like, how do I feel about just the performance?
Yeah, I mean, the performance is what it is. They, but I'm just specifically speaking to those Ant-Man fans of like, how much they appreciated that. Because I'm like, after learning about that after the fact of those characters, I'm like, oh, that is cool that they, did that deep dive to get that kind of character depth for like those kind of people. But overall, I'm like, that's at the same time, I'm like, that is pretty standard at the MCU now in the state where you're like, oh, the Falcon and Winter Soldier guy, that it's like the guy that grabs the wings, like, oh, that's supposed to be the new Falcon, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, okay, cool, everyone's gonna be something. That's awesome. We're just at that point.
Right, that seems like two separate points, but yeah,
that often happens with the thought process.
You just mentioned Torres, I believe.
Torres. That's the name. I couldn't remember.
He's going to be Falcon in New World Order.
Yep.
That's different than what we were talking about with the Black Captain America and Goliath and stuff, because those are people who've done stuff, right? Or even Hank. Like that was stuff that happened, and they're not going to be these characters moving forward, or they're not going to be superheroes moving forward.
Right. No, yeah, you make a good point about the cover-up thing. Like, it has to be explained by cover-up, otherwise Nick Fury is just not good at his job.
I mean, it wasn't his job, it was just a dream he had, but yeah, he's not very motivated then.
yeah, it's fair enough. Because like he did know of the OG people like Howard Stark and like basically everyone involved with the super serums, super
and it
soldier
makes sense
serum
that he's
stuff.
not trying to get like Michael Douglas, Hank Pym to be part of the Avengers. He's probably like, yeah, that guy's crazy, and probably not gonna like work out properly.
Yeah,
so he could know about him and just be like, yeah, fuck that guy. But I think everyone, it would be weird to try and break out anybody else. So I think they've written it in a good way. I know that doesn't answer your question
right.
wasn't really for me, but I do think that for me, as someone who knew of these characters before the movie, I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's I feel like that's the best way to do it, so that everything doesn't really contradict itself.
Which is why, like, remember when there was like rumors of the Fantastic Four movie being set in the 60s or something like that? I'm like, but that what? How would that? It's a weird thing. Like, I get the concept of it and all that kind of stuff. Fury
is supposed to be, but I think they said that because then they could just go off and then no one would know about them in the 80s or something like that.
I guess so, but
yeah,
I mean,
that's why they're saying it would be set in the 60s. I know it's not going to do that, but I shouldn't say I know that. I feel like that's not the case, but that would be the reasoning for setting it in the 60s. The same way this Ant-Man stuff was in the 60s and got covered up. It could be there was a group of superheroes in the 60s, but because time has passed, people don't really know about it, or it was actively covered up.
That's fair. All the cover up and conspiracies, which I do appreciate that they're bringing into the forefront of storytelling, like with like De La Fontaine's character and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, cool, that's kind of neat. Val? We'll see where that goes. Yeah, Val. We'll see where that goes in New World Order, because that, or like Armor Wars, for example. I think that would be kind of cool, and of course Thunderbolts. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
And Ghost will be in Thunderbolts as well.
Really?
Yeah, she's a team member. That's why I don't really have notes on Ghost, because again, yeah, she showed up in this.
Yep.
And to your point, as a movie, it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay. But it never felt like her story was done, and she's about to be a part of a big movie for Marvel.
And I'm just, like, I would assume that they're recruiting her because of her ability to phase in and out, but
well, if she's phasing in and out, it means but I guess that's what they were doing, was at the end of the movie, they're trying to get enough of whatever that is so that they can help Ghost. Like, they're trying to help themselves, but they're trying to help Ghost. But since they're gone for 5 years, who knows what happened to Ghost.
Yeah, because they did say that, like, I believe I remember that there was like dialogue saying like she needs more to stabilize. Like, it's just like, oh, that's one dosage, for example. I'm like, okay, it's like medicine that you deliver multiple times. I get that. So maybe she is unstabilized because of the events of Ant-Man and the Wasp being like, yeah, maybe they died and there's no one to get me quantum particles. So yep, there we go. Okay, didn't know that actually, but very cool. I'm glad she's getting more stuff to do.
Yeah,
because
I like the actress.
Mhm.
But I think she suffers from what we've said the main characters suffer from as well,
Yeah.
which is not a lot to do.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody that gets a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
Other than maybe arguably Hank gets a lot to do, considering
Yeah.
you'd think that he'd be more in the background of the movie, but he's in a lot of it and he's
Yeah.
getting shit done throughout.
I was gonna say that too. I'm like, Michael Douglas gets a lot to do in this one.
Yeah.
I'm good for him. Like,
Yeah, I'm not complaining about that. It's just
Yeah.
That's why I think that's what I noticed. Like, yeah, he's getting a lot to do, so maybe the Ant-Man and Wasp they're talking about is the original, but then I'm like,
Mhm.
well, Janet doesn't get much to do in this movie, so no, I guess it's not that.
Yeah, because you're right. The bookended stuff, not fantastic. But I mean,
I like what I see of
yeah.
her mostly in the beginning, but I
Right.
like I like Michelle Pfeiffer, so I like what I see of her. But I wish I wish either Wasp had more to do in this movie.
It's true. It's true. It was a movie.
Yeah, it's not like I'm not angry about it.
No.
I don't really care. And I don't mean I don't really care. What I mean is like it's whatever to me. Like it's just a movie that didn't work for me.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things where you're like, you have to accept that some are misses in the sense where if everything's a hit, your standards are just real low. So like,
Agreed.
It's in this, it's just like, yeah.
To be fair, I'm not just saying, oh,
it.
this one's not for me, so that I look like I have discerning taste. I feel like if people listen to our first episode
Mhm.
reviewing this, which I don't remember what number that is, but I'm sure you can find it. The title, the name,
Yeah.
the titles are there. It just didn't feel like it did what the good sequels in the MCU and elsewhere do for me.
I agree.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. This just I was underwhelmed with this.
Yeah, I had a bit of a false start thinking like, oh yeah, like maybe this is good, and then no, I was right the first time. This is, I'm sure I've rewatched this since we reviewed it, but it felt like a chore this time.
I
So
agree.
I might be forgetting stuff. I don't like I genuinely just might be forgetting stuff because I was just like, this isn't working for me.
I agree with that. I mean, that's why I said like it's a fun ride. I had fun while watching it because I'm like, that's like the bit that Scott gets about like, hey, this is a disguise. We're wearing sunglasses and a baseball hat. We just look like ourselves at a baseball game. Like as a meta joke about the whole MCU. I'm like, I'm glad he gets to do stuff like that in this, and he gets room to be so funny. But it's just like the driving force of the titular characters, it's barely even related to him. It's related to him through guilt. And I'm like, okay,
yeah, I think
that
I
sucks.
don't know the best way to word it, but that's exactly how I feel, is that he's not driving the movie. And that was fine in the first movie because you're like, oh yeah, he has to like figure out how he fits into the superhero world at large, but also in Hank Pym's world. But it's like, no, he's done enough now. Like, I don't know, maybe he hasn't done enough, but I feel like going off by yourself to Germany, I know you're fighting on a team, but like he's been through some shit now. Like he didn't have Hank backing him up or Hope backing him up in Germany. Like, so he was just with a bunch of people who aren't going to be like, oh yeah, like we got to help Scott. They already think like, well, he's the guy if he's here. So it's like he's been able to operate that way. But then they come back to this and it's like, well, we're not really going to deal with the fallout of I'm trying to pick my words carefully because I understand that the movie is him on house arrest because of Civil War and that Hope is mad that he left. But I feel like she would be mad anyway because of the whole stealing stuff and like it just doesn't feel like it's so specific to we were a team and you broke it up.
Yep,
and there was no like because I feel like that is something that you would really like never really let up. Like you wouldn't have moments where you're not like, no, seriously, why did you leave without me? Like you didn't even ask me. Like it wasn't like you find out like he asked her and she said, no, I'm busy. Like you're just like, oh, he just didn't even think to ask her, or he thought about it and got scared. And you're just like, yeah, like that is something to talk about. Like that feels like if you're calling it Ant-Man and the Wasp, you're looking at how they become Ant-Man and the Wasp, like how they figure that out. And now I get it. I've fallen into the trap of trying to be like, this is how you write the movie, which I didn't want to do. But like
right.
that is how I feel. That was an avenue they could have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't have to be specifically what I said, but it just feels like there was no real how do they become a team.
Yes.
It was just like he's back. They have to be back together because he's got the shit in his head of Janet. They're gonna get it out of him, and then she just likes him again by the end of it. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily earned. It just feels like, well, she could have done like there could have been more actively unpacking how she comes to that conclusion or how they get back to being on good terms.
I completely agree because, you know, with the whole idea of like maybe this is the movie that does reunite them, right? Because you get that one scene where they're talking, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's ending by being like her going, oh yeah, once this is done, you're out of my life. Like we just need you for this. I'm like, okay, cool. She's not going to try. We're good with that. Boundaries. But by the end of the movie, inexplicably, there we go. And it's just like, okay, maybe she's just getting confused because of that funny scene where Scott, like Janet gets to possess, I guess, so to speak, Paul Rudd's body.
Lab,
yeah. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's affection there, and maybe there's crossover and all that kind of stuff. And maybe she's like, realized like, hey, I was just mad that you made a stupid decision. But it seems like the thing that you're mad about is legitimately like, yeah, it's understandable that you don't forgive about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing.
A really big thing.
Yeah.
And the movie is prompting you to remember, like, yeah, they're supposed to be a team because it's what I like about the Cassie thing, where she's like, I could be your partner. Like, it didn't work out with what I really like her delivery of like, don't laugh. Like, I think I'd be good at it. Like, that's a really good thing. And it seems to me like that's the whole, like, getting your partner back. Like, Hank gets Janet back, and Scott gets Hope back. But like, I just thought that there was room to explore that more.
Yeah, I agree. There's no, in my opinion, real work being done there to reestablish that, right? It's not like that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could say like, oh yeah, they learned to partner up again through the fights with Ghost and all that kind of stuff. You could say that, sure. But I mean, that's not why they were attracted in the first place, was it? I mean, or
I do think that is kind of like what won her over, that he wasn't an idiot when he like actually was doing the Ant-Man stuff.
Fair enough. Maybe that is meant to portray that, but to me, I'm like, oh, maybe they should have shared a significant look. I don't know.
I can't even tell you if they did, but yeah, I think it should be more memorable. I think it should be more memorable if they did.
Yeah, because it's less like for example, if Ant-Man jumped in front of her to take a hit from Ghost and like really was hurt, like I'm like, oh, okay, maybe she could see that as like whatever, you know, and like we can see that affection on screen like developing after that, right? I would get that, but there's literally nothing else done. It's
to
just
be
like,
clear,
hey,
I don't think this is a case of she has no affection for him and she gains it over the course of the movie. I think she's just mad at him, and she needed time to be mad at him. The affection is always there, like for this movie, not the first movie. Affection is always there, or else there really isn't anything to be mad about. You just be like, fuck that guy, he's an idiot.
I agree.
That is the anger, is that you do have feelings for him. You opened yourself up and he still left you like that.
Yeah.
But I think that doesn't stop the movie from needing to explore that anger and how the dialogue they have.
Yeah.
It can't be as just implied through fight scenes as it is.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, because like if you genuinely didn't care, like indifference is so much worse than actively hating someone. Because if you actively hate someone or are mad at someone, you care about them because they hurt you.
You don't have to love them, but you care enough to feel a strong way about them.
Exactly. You care enough about the situation, the person, or whatever, but you care, and that's why you hate. But if you are indifferent towards it, then that's the worst situation. And like in this situation, you would have thought in that 2 years that based on how she's acting and all that kind of stuff, that she's just indifferent at this point and moved on. right? But it doesn't seem that way. It's just like, no, we're done after this. Cool. You made that decision already. It's just I don't get the leap. I wish there was more unpacking of it to get them back together as a team. But you're bringing up the fact that you're right. Maybe the first movie, that was what attracted to him. Maybe that's what it needed. But I didn't see it that way. I kind of wish there was more of a, and this is just me wishing, not being like, I'm going to, like, obviously critiquing what's there, but I wish there was a little bit more dedicated to that for a movie that was like short, but also felt really, really long, in the sense where I'm like, oh, where's this going? Like, it's being pulled in too many different directions to me.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that this didn't have the focus it needed.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this movie's also shorter than 2 hours. I could have sworn it was over 2 hours long.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, right? For like under 2 hour long, because I remember that being discussed, like, as a thing. It's like the runtime of this is significantly shorter than people thought it would be, especially because given the time of where it was, like the movie leading up to Endgame and all that kind of stuff. People were like, wait, what? And I'm like,
well, it was leading up to Captain Marvel, but yeah.
Right. But either way, it's just the idea of like those two movies between the snap. It's just it under delivers. There we go. But it does explain why he wasn't in Wakanda. So for the people that were upset
Infinity
about that,
War explains that.
Yeah,
before this movie came out.
I know. It's just like there were some people like, oh well, if he can escape us, I'm like, oh, shut up, dude. Like, just no.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were people that thought that.
I've definitely heard some people talk about
They're
that.
like, yeah, Clinton, Scott are on house arrest.
Yes,
that's that.
They didn't appreciate the fact that I reminded them of that. Let's just say that, because they were very, very adamantly passionate about their distaste towards that.
He didn't leave his house he got drugged and then was out of the house.
Yeah, exactly.
And then got guilted into staying out of the house. And that's not like he went back in and then got out again.
Yep, no choice was made there. There was no consent.
No.
He was kidnapped.
Yeah. Don't really have much else to say about
this. There's nothing else to say about this movie, I think, personally. Like, I thought things were like, I do believe that everyone acted well, and that's the weird thing about this, is like they acted well. I believe their performances, but I don't care about this movie. It's a weird position to be in.
I think there's things to like in it. I can't say a lot, but there are things to like. Performances are one of them.
Jokes being another one. Yep.
I genuinely think, in a non-joking way, that Cassie is a strong point of the movie.
I agree.
Like, it's a nice bit of heart to anchor stuff.
Yeah. You get his, like, for me, I'm like, Cassie, every time I question Scott's motivation of like, oh, I'm torn, I'm like, I think of Cassie and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense why you're actually that torn, you know?
Because he's missing time. Like, I know this is also in the third movie, but like, before the snap, he missed time because he was in jail. So like, he is constantly trying to get like that time, like make up for what he lost with Cassie.
Right. And the interesting thing to me is the visitation rights under house arrest. That's very interesting to me, in the sense where I'm like, so over the course of 2 years, I would assume that you've seen Cassie a lot more because of the fact that the other family loves you so much now. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's weird to be like, yeah, it's weird.
What's weird?
I just I don't care enough about the characters, but like, thing is, I still think they did a good job. Like, the actors did a good job and everyone did a good job. It's just the writing is too convenient for me in this movie. It's just,
I see,
on a silver platter. I don't appreciate that. I wanted more.
I don't know if that's an example of it, but yeah, we've talked about
examples. No, the example of it is egregiously the Janet thing, where she's like, oh yeah, bzz, we're good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, let's rate this thing.
Let's do it. What are you giving it?
It's a 5.
That makes sense based on everything said.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I liked it a bit more than you. I'm going to give it a 6, but it's a very weak 6.
Yeah, like if we ever did half points and all that kind of stuff, which we do have points. We do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, soft 6, it still makes sense. Yeah, for me, it's like barely engaging, barely there for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did it, guys. We revisited Ant-Man and the Wasp. We didn't really change our opinion of it, but we certainly talked about it for this amount of time. So yeah, as I said, the plan is to have this out the week before our Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania episode. So that'll be some nice back-to-back stuff for you guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun because we'll either sound like giant idiots or right on the money.
I don't know if we'll sound like giant idiots.
Well, but I mean that brief discussion about the Janet stuff in whatever. At least that's what I'm thinking. I don't think anything
we said would make us sound like an idiot.
Fair enough.
I think we made educated guesses on what would happen.
Yeah, but I still hold that reservation. I am genuinely worried that, again, Ant-Man and the Wasp are going to get sidelined in this movie.
They might. Well,
we'll see.
What will get sidelined is my ability to let you know that we are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films. We've even got Contra Zoom Pod on the network. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, more shows. And go to thatshelf.com. Just go there twice today. But also go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten for older episodes of our show. We are on Twitter and Instagram at tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, whole bunch of places. So please rate, review, subscribe, follow, share with your friends, do all of that good stuff. Get in touch with us with your mode of the mode you like to do best. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.